There are careers that end with a trophy raised over the head, and there are careers that end with a man on his knees in the grass, being lifted up by teammates who don't know what to say. There are goodbyes a player chooses on his own terms, and there are goodbyes that get chosen for him on a Sunday night in a stadium that already knew his name. And then there's the kind Neymar had in New Jersey, the kind where the biggest star of a generation scores the goal, wins nothing, and says a sentence into a TV camera that ends up meaning more than the scoreline ever will. Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Below, I'll break down exactly what Neymar said after Brazil's World Cup exit to Norway, why he chose that moment to say it, and why 4 short sentences are traveling further than the result itself. Brazil had just been eliminated, round of 16, a team many had penciled in as favorites, gone in the first knockout match, beaten by a country that had never done this before. And in the tunnel, in front of a camera from TV Globo, the man wearing the number 10 shirt didn't talk about the next tournament. And he didn't talk about regret in the abstract. He said this: I tried, now it's over. No, we'll come back stronger. No, the future is bright. 4 words, repeated once, from a man who had just decided in real time that his international career was finished. To understand why that sentence landed the way it did, you have to understand exactly what Neymar was carrying into that stadium, and exactly how long the story had been building toward this one night. This is a player who made his Brazil debut at that same ground, MetLife Stadium, back in August 2010, as a teenager in a friendly against the United States. 16 years later, in the same building, it ended. He came into this tournament as Brazil's all-time leading scorer, a man who had already eclipsed Pelé in the record books, carrying a nation's 5 World Cup legacy and its 24-year wait for a 6th. He'd been to 4 World Cups already, and every single one of them had ended the same way for Brazil, short of the trophy. This one was supposed to be different. Instead, a nagging calf injury had already reduced him to a bit-part role, restricted to appearances off the bench for most of the tournament. And then came Norway, not a traditional football power, not a team with a World Cup pedigree to speak of, but a team built around one player playing the tournament of his life. Erling Haaland had been terrifying every defense he faced, and on this night he terrified Brazil's. He opened the scoring with a header in the 79th minute, then, 11 minutes later, controlled the ball calmly and finished into the far corner to put Norway 2 clear. Brazil had already missed a golden chance earlier in the match, a penalty saved by Norway's goalkeeper. The story looked finished before Neymar had even touched the ball in a meaningful way. Then, in the 98th minute, he got his moment. Brazil won a penalty. Neymar stepped up and scored, his first goal for Brazil since 2023, and the last kick of his World Cup career. He didn't just celebrate quietly. He turned on the goalkeeper, exchanged words, smiled, laughed, pushed back against a man who had just beaten his country. It was defiant, it was a little chaotic, and it changed nothing about the scoreboard. Seconds later, the final whistle went. Brazil, 2-1. Eliminated in the round of 16, their earliest World Cup exit since 1990. And that is the context sitting underneath what Neymar said next. He didn't wait for a press conference days later, didn't let a federation statement do the talking for him. Right there on the pitch, minutes after full time, he collapsed to his knees in tears, and his teammates came over to try to hold him together. That's the image most people will remember. But it's the sentence that came after it that's actually spreading. Not a farewell tour, not a scripted announcement with a highlight reel behind it, just a man, still in his kit, still sweating, telling the truth into a microphone because he didn't have it in him to perform anything else. Then came the second layer, the one that turns a sad quote into something that sounds almost literary. In the same breath, Neymar tied the ending back to the beginning. It started here, at this stadium, and it finished here. 16 years, one building. He didn't need a highlight package to make that point. He made it himself, out loud, in real time, connecting the first cap of his career to the last kick of it in a single sentence, like he'd been carrying that symmetry around for years without knowing it would end up being true. Here's what makes this even harder to write off as a heat-of-the-moment soundbite. Neymar wasn't the only person in that stadium putting a stamp on what had just happened. Brazil's manager, Carlo Ancelotti, a coach with 5 Champions League titles who has seen this sport at every level there is, had every reason to talk about the future, about transition, about young players stepping up. Instead, in his own press conference, he said something that quietly backed up the weight of the moment his star player had just created. He called it a very disappointing result and admitted the entire squad was hurting, before adding that he didn't believe his team deserved to lose, but they had to accept it anyway. That's not a coach protecting a storyline. That's a coach confirming from the technical area that what just happened to Neymar and to Brazil was as heavy as it looked from the stands. So here's the full picture of what actually happened in that tunnel after Brazil's exit from the 2026 World Cup. Their biggest star scored the only goal of a chaotic, bad-tempered ending, taunted the goalkeeper who'd beaten his country, and then, seconds later, dropped to his knees in tears. He didn't hide behind a federation statement or wait for the cameras to leave. He said it himself, twice, in the plainest words available to him, that he had tried and that it was over. And then he closed the loop on 16 years of his career with a single line connecting the stadium where he started to the stadium where he finished. His own coach, with nothing to gain by dramatizing it, confirmed the team hadn't deserved this ending, only that they now had to live with it. Neymar leaves the World Cup as Brazil's all-time leading scorer, tied for third all-time among Brazilian players in the tournament's history, and one calf injury and one bad Sunday away from the send-off his career actually deserved. Subscribe if you think Neymar earned the right to go out on his own terms, even if the scoreboard never gave him the ending he wanted, and I'll see you in the next video.